There's a million ways to go, and obviously game day is going to be at Camp Randall this weekend. The Buckeyes and whiskey. I guess as a jumping off point here, Kirk, how the way the season's gone so far, close to what you thought, completely the opposite. Your expectations coming in versus what you've seen so far. Big picture.
Well, I think at the beginning of the year, you always know that there's a few programs that are going to be there regardless. And Alabama is always going to have a chance with Nick Saban. What Urban Meyer's been able to do, he's only lost 4 games in 5+ years now. Ohio State, despite all the losses, that they have a chance. Clemson with Deshaun Watson coming back. Those are the 3 teams I think a lot of people expected to have great years. Michigan with Jim Harbaugh is up there. But there are a few surprises. I think Washington and what they're doing out west has been, I wouldn't say a surprise, but the way they're doing it emphatically in the last 2 weeks over Stanford and Oregon have been very impressive. What Louisville has done, I mean, they have probably been the story the first half, despite a loss to Clemson. Lamar Jackson, who's already been on the cover of SI, he is, at this point, if you had to give a Heisman Trophy at the halfway point, you'd probably give it to Lamar Jackson with his playmaking ability. And in my opinion, even with a loss, I still think Louisville is hovering at that top 4 mark. I've just been really impressed with them as a football team. And I think that's what opens up the discussion is all these undefeated teams, the world that we live in college football, there are people that still vote, and they have a hard time with me saying Louisville with 1 loss should still be ahead of some of these undefeated teams. But I think if the committee is doing their job and really watching the games, it's really hard for me to look at Louisville and not consider them one of the top 4, 5, 6 teams right now in the country, despite their 1 loss in Death Valley against Clemson.
Yeah, no, it gets really hard, especially when you have a team like Washington. And you mentioned them. And Jake Browning, who we've kind of maybe knew, but a lot of people on the East Coast don't know him because he's out there in Washington and plays late games. But how are they so dominant this year? I don't think many people saw this preseason unless you were really dialed in to college football and really to Pac-12 football.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Number one, if you guys go back and remember when Boise State was kind of a thorn in the side to the BCS with Chris Peterson, who was their head coach, and Kellen Moore, who was their quarterback, it seemed like every year there would be a discussion. If a Boise State's undefeated, could they have a chance to make it into the BCS? And what I took away from Chris Peterson's teams, while a lot of people saw some razzle-dazzle and some flea flickers and a lot of high-profile games where they did some, Statue of Liberty and different things. If you really watched them and studied Boise State, they were physical in how they ran the football with Doug Martin, who's now in the NFL. That Kellen Moore rarely threw interceptions, and they made great decisions with the football. And they were just very sound and tough to beat. Well, he's taken that from kind of a group of 5 or a smaller school, that model, and he's taken that into the Pac-12 in his 3rd year now with Washington, where he's able to recruit a different caliber athlete. And now he's all of a sudden winning after 3 years at a very, very high level. Mm-hmm. And I think he's taking that same concept that worked at Boise, and he's doing it in a more high-profile position at Washington. And Jake Browning right now has 23 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. If you went back and looked at Kellen Moore, I think one year he threw for 45 or 50 touchdowns and threw like 4 interceptions. So he has a system that allows his quarterback to be able to kind of hit high percentage throws, run the football, play sound defense. They're very strange in the college football world. They rush 4 almost every snap. They don't ever blitz, and yet they lead the nation in sacks and they lead the nation in turnovers. So they're on to something, and unless they get upset and unless the moment becomes too big, Washington is a team that's for real out west.
Yeah, tough to disagree. Kirk Herbstreit with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. And Kirk, back to what you said about the way there's a tendency to overreact to undefeateds while slighting potentially teams that have 1 loss but are really, really good, like Louisville. You get to the middle of the top 10 rankings, and you just address Washington. We know that A&M is obviously highly viable. But below them, and you have a few other teams with 1 loss, but below that, you have Nebraska and Baylor lying in the weeds. 2 teams that I don't think personally are good enough to either run the table or really have a say in the national championship picture. But hey, wackier things have happened. Nebraska, Baylor. It's the middle of October. They've yet to lose. Do they have a shot?
No,
Not at all. Not okay. All right.
No, that maybe they do. I don't think so. I think Nebraska is much better with Mike Riley this year. He's been able to really kind of show his guys his system now. His quarterback, Tommy Armstrong, is doing a very good job. But this is really where we start to find out about Nebraska. While they're off to a good start, winning their first 5, if you look at who they still have to play, even this weekend, they're at Indiana. They still have at Wisconsin. They're at Ohio State. They're at Iowa. If they end up running the table, and if they do, they get to a Big Ten championship game against either Michigan or Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
If they run the table, they will definitely have earned it, and they will be in the playoff. It's one of those things I'd have to see it to believe.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And as far as Baylor is concerned, there's so many off the field distractions and stories for Baylor. A lot of people wondered how they would be this year, how competitive they could be this year. And got to give Jim Grove, former Wake Forest head coach, a lot of credit for just kind of coming in there and just kind of maybe calming things down, so to speak. And he held on to the staff. Phil Bennett is his defensive coordinator. His offensive coordinator is doing a good job there as well with Coach Bryle's son calling the plays. But again, they still have to play some teams that I think will be challenging for them. And even if they run the table, there are a lot of people that think because of how weak their non-conference is and because the Big 12 is just so down this year, even that might still be hard for them to get into the playoff this year.
Kirk, give me some insight on some of these stars, I'll put them in quotes, of college football right now. And really I'm talking about the Heisman Trophy race. We know the quarterbacks that are out there. Lamar Jackson burst onto the scene. Deshaun Watson's still there. I think even Jake Browning, who we were just referring to, he's put his name in that conversation. But Jabril Peppers, he's a guy who, if you didn't see him coming, you didn't know that he was going to be this amazing. Not since Charles Woodson have we had this conversation about a primarily defensive player. What are his chances? I mean, it's mostly quarterbacks. There's a couple Alabama running backs that we've thrown in there. But is he a serious contender for the top award for best college athlete?
I think he is. I would start with Lamar Jackson after the first 6 weeks of the season. I think he's doing some things that we've not seen done in a long time. He is as dynamic in the open field as any quarterback that I've seen. I mean, a lot of people are talking about a Michael Vick type of guy when he gets out in the open field. So he's been a unique story this year. After that, I think it's wide open because some of the big names when the season first started, Dalvin Cook at Florida State, Leonard Fournette at LSU, Deshaun Watson at Clemson, even though I would say he's still in it, Christian McCaffrey out at Stanford. A lot of those high-profile guys have kind of taken themselves out of it. So I think it is wide open. But Jabril Peppers, much like Charles Woodson, because he's a unique story, he's on a team that's going to be up hovering around the top 5 all year. He's a unique story because he can play corner, he can play nickel. He plays a lot of linebacker for him. He blitzes. He covers. He does everything. I mean, you watch this guy play. Tiki, you would love this guy. I don't know how much you've seen him, but you would love this kid.
He's a Jersey kid. He's a Jersey kid, Kurt. I remember hearing about him.
Yeah, I know. He's just tenacious, so you can't help but love him. But then they throw him over on offense. He'll play the slot receiver. He'll play tailback. They snap him the ball as a wildcat quarterback. But he's not just doing the normal wildcat stuff. They'll roll him out. He looks like he's just playing backyard football. Like the game just looks so easy to him. So needless to say, I have a vote. You got to put 3 names on there. And if I were voting right now, he would definitely be on my ballot. And the kid's so much fun to watch.
I'm talking to Kirk Herbstreit with us here on Tiki and Tierney. Of course, game day coming up on Saturday. 5-0 Buckeyes taking on Whiskey, who in their one loss played very tough against Michigan. That was at the Big House Campground, late Eastern ABC. I was telling Kirk before we started talking for real, before we actually got him on the air, I said, he has such a pleasant delivery. He's the kind of guy, and I've always gotten this from you, Kirk, that I would want to just sit down and have a beer with. And I think I speak for most of America when I say that. But I got to ask you this, man, because I know you have kids, and I have I have two, and they're much younger than yours. But
Kurt's of the initiated. Kurt has twins.
oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
does have twins. I forgot about the twins. I forgot about the twins. So I'm sitting there on Saturdays, and I'm looking. I got my laptop open, got the kids running around. Well, one's not even moving yet. They just kind of sitting there. The other's smashing golf balls off the walls, and I'm saying, all right, who am I going to bet today? I'm getting ready for my own TV show on Sunday. And then I look at you, and I watch you doing your show, and then Tiki, at 8 o'clock at night, he's back in the booth doing the game. What is your Sunday like? You literally work. Now, you're not digging ditches, and I know that they're paying you well, but, man, you work all day.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's all adrenaline. From the days that Tiki was playing at Virginia to right now, I love college football. Like, I love it. I like the NFL. If I had to cover the NFL, my agent years ago asked me about that. It would be work to me. I would like it, but I wouldn't love it. College football my dad played at Ohio State. He coached with Woody and Bo. I just grew up in a state of Ohio where Ohio State football was like Greek mythology. I mean, it was just dream, the craziest dream, and it just never left me. And you would think it would get old and the stories would get stale, but for me it doesn't. I love it, and I can't get enough of watching these programs. And I think that's what carries me, because I don't sleep a whole lot on Friday, Saturday. It is a grind, but if I did this in March or April, I would be comatose. I would be dead. But when you're traveling around the country and following these college stories, and you go to Madison, Wisconsin, and there's 90,000 people going absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. You don't get that anywhere else, and so that's probably the thing that keeps me going.
There you go. Kirk Herbstreit, ESPN Game Day with us here, Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio.
Kurt, the biggest college rivalries, you're partnering with Coors Light to celebrate them. Tell us about this promotion and what fans can get involved with this. How can they get involved with this?
Yeah, it's really cool. Coors Light is a partner with over 40 college sports programs, and they are celebrating the classic college football rivalries this year. This is something that allows the fans to not only potentially enjoy the game, but also what Coors Light likes about these rivalries, it's really celebrating the entire weekend. And you're talking about big concerts on Friday night in Austin, L.A., Columbus, Tampa at the national championship game. The games that you'd be looking at there in Austin is Baylor, in Texas, in L.A. is USC and UCLA. Ohio State and Michigan and Columbus and Tampa, of course, the national championship game. So if your listeners are interested in potentially being able to go and enjoy those games and go to the concerts the night before, if you go to CoorsLight.com/rivalry, you can enter the sweepstakes to win free tickets to the shows on Friday night. And a variety of different shows. There's Big and Rich and Dustin Lynch will play at the Baylor-Texas game. Jared Neiman and Big and Rich at the Ohio State-Michigan game. Snoop Dogg is going to be performing at the USC-UCLA game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
Snoop.
They got a lot of variety and a lot of cool concerts coming up. Again, that's Friday night of all these big games.
Little deal, double G. And we got to roll. But, I mean, what gives you the impression that our audience, I mean, the audacity of you to suggest that our listeners will like music, beer, and football. Who do you think you are, Kirk? Come on, man. Don't make those broad assumptions.
Yeah, just a hunch, right? Just a hunch.
Hey, 30 seconds. We both have to run. We seem to dissect the Texas situation a lot more than we dissect, for obvious reasons, Notre Dame. What do you think happens with the Irish? Anything with Brian Kelly?
I think Brian Kelly, I know it's been a tough year, but just based on what he's been able to do, I think if they finish the way they've started, I think he goes into the offseason probably excited to recruit and excited to get ready for next year. Mm-hmm. And then I think he's probably one of the guys that everybody's talking about being on the proverbial hot seat going into next year. Yeah. It's the world we all live in with high profile jobs today. They need results or people get frustrated. And I don't think he's in trouble this year, but if he finishes the way he started, he goes into next year probably being one of those guys on the hot seat.